going to be the business analysis session. And today we have with us one of our trainers, Mr. Jonathan George. Mr. Jonathan is an AI engineer and a risk analyst. He graduated with the BSc Economics with experience in data science, data modeling, risk analysis, and as well as business analysis and forecasts. Please, I would like every one of us to put our hands together or send an emoji or just celebrate Mr. Jonathan for us to take today's session. If you cannot unmute your mic to speak, you can also use emojis. You can send a message in the chat box. All right, Mr. Jonathan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
everyone. Happy new month of August. It's good to be here. I can see a hand up. Mr. Vasco, do you have any question or something you want to say? All right. Business analysis, establishing the requirements is our conversation or our interactive session, the topic of our interactive session today. Um, Business analysis, establishing the requirements. What does it mean? What the requirements mean with regards to business analysis? Now, let me start by painting a scenario. Let me share my screen very quickly, then move on to paint a scenario. Um, Hi, Damola. Is there any noise from my background? Because I am walking from outside. Is there any noise from my background?
It's fine. I can't hear any noise from your background.
All right, all right, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, so what does establishing the requirements mean with regards to business analysis? Let me start by painting a scenario so that we understand the full picture of today's interactive session. Now, let's imagine a case or a
Jonathan,
scenario whereby a hospital spends $2 million or £2 million, as the case may be, on a new patient booking system. Now, the hospital management launches this application or system, as the case may be. Uh, the staffs or the workers within the hospital end up not using the system that has been launched and has been created. The question becomes why? Or there's poor utilization of that tool or system, as the case may be. The question becomes why. Now, very often the case would be that the tool that has been built does not apply to the needs of that organization or the needs of the clients or the needs of the patient, as the case may be in this case where we are discussing a hospital scenario, right? Now, developers, as we are looking in this scenario, or as we're looking at in this scenario, developers must have built what management thought was needed. However, there is a mismatch in this case between what management thought was needed and what was actually needed in the field or by the clients or by the patients of the hospitals, as the case may be, or by the end user, as the case may be. And now
sorry,
that's what we.
sorry, please, can you put the presentation on can you put the slide on the presentation mode so we can see it clearly? Sorry
All
for
right,
cutting you.
no problem. All right. And so that's what we are here to discuss today, right? How do we establish what is needed before we go ahead to build a product, before we go ahead to develop a system, before we go ahead to create solutions for clients, to create solutions for end users, to create solutions for businesses, right? How do we establish what those businesses, what those clients, what those end users really need so that there's no mismatch? So that our product actually goes smoothly from development, from conceptualization actually to development, and then to the market place where the end user ends up making use of the product, right? And so that's what we are here to discuss today. The three steps or the three core steps that are needed when it comes to establishing the requirements are: one, elicit. You have to first do this by carrying out interviews. You have to first do this by interacting with the end users, interacting with the clients, interacting with the market, interacting with the businesses to understand what their pain points are, to understand the gaps that they have, to understand the problems that they need solutions to. Uh, and then you also have to come with your own expertise. Now, it's not enough you can be interacting with a client, with an end user, with a business, and they tell you, oh, the market has been so tough. We do not register, we do not remember to book for appointments, to follow up with our booking for appointments at the hospital because we are so busy with work. And so maybe we just need a reminder on our phones as a text message every 2 days before the booking should take place. But maybe what they need really is not a reminder via text messages. Maybe what they really do need is uh maybe they are far more active on WhatsApp. Maybe what they do really need is a reminder via WhatsApp broadcast. Maybe what they really need is a WhatsApp group. Maybe what they really need is a workplace application that helps them to set alarms, right, without getting a reminder via text messages, right? So you have to be able to, as a business analyst, when you listen to the pain points of the clients, the customers, the end users, the businesses, you also have to be able to deduce, you have to be able to infer, you have to be able to understand how to provide proper solutions that align with their problems and able to give solutions to those problems that will be useful to the market, right? The next step is to analyze. So you've heard what the client says, you've heard what the user says, right? You've heard the pain points of the business. You now want to create analysis. How feasible are the solutions that they need in the market? What's the cost analysis going to be, right? What's the time analysis going to be? Now, we spoke about risk about 3 weeks ago. And now, if you look at it and they say what we need right now is an application that takes customer names and saves it, and you're able to automate messages to customers. Now, you also want to look at things like analyze things like the regulatory environment with regards to information security in that case, right? If you are building or a solution, an application or a system, right, that solves customer problems with regards to keeping information of customers on a database. You also want to analyze how much time, what's the time space between when you are getting that information and when the client or the business needs the solution, and what can you build within that amount of time. Now, if what you can deliver within that amount of time is really not what the business needs, then you're also going to have to carry out a time analysis and say, look, this is the amount of time we will need to build your product for you. And this is the amount of time you have to be patient with us to be able to deliver a proper solution for your business, right? Or if they have strict deadlines, you have to also look at how you can maximize the amount of time. Now, that's speaking to analysis. The last part when it comes to establishing the requirements for business analysis is documentation. Now, a lot of solutions, a lot of applications, a lot of systems fail, a lot of products fail even before they reach the market due to poor documentation. Now, you've heard what the client says, you've heard what the business says, and you have a solution in your mind. Very often, when you are creating products and solutions and systems, it's a team, it's not a one person business or a one person job, right? And so, you, even if you are the lead developer or lead technician, as the case may be, you have people working with you who are also crucial to the delivery of that product and system. Now, you as the lead have an idea to solving the customer or the business needs and requirements. Now, the deputy lead, the CTO, which is Chief Technology Officer, the chief business officer, the chief security officer, uh, these other people also have their own ideas around creating solutions for the business. And so you must be able to document these solutions. You must be able to document your analysis. You must be able to document your procedures in such a way that there's alignment, all right, on the steps to follow. There's alignment that guides you on the scope of your product building. There's a document alignment that guides you and prevents you from going into scope overreach, where you have to change your scope, you have to cover more ground than initially planned as the product design or development goes forward with time, right? You want to prevent such things. The reason why you want to prevent things like scope overreach and the likes is because very often when scope increases that is unplanned for and is undocumented due to a lack of documentation or lack of proper documentation that allows you to monitor the development of your solutions or product, as the case may be. Very often when this happens, you also pass the scope of your budget, right? You also pass the scope of your time, and then you also pass the scope of other resources that are poured into the investment of creating and setting up such products and solutions for the end users. And so you want to ensure three things once again. The first is to elicit information from the right sources, which includes interviewing clients, interviewing businesses, interviewing the appropriate stakeholders. Go to the organizations, find out the pain points where they need solutions to their businesses. Where they are having challenges, and then be able to infer why these challenges occur, aside from what the consumer or the client or the end user, as the case may be, is telling you. Analyze these problems, analyze the resources you have at hand, analyze the challenges that may occur or may arise down the line. All right, such as change in regulatory stance, such as supply chain risk, such as unforeseen circumstances, which again you can call risk that may arise and may affect the business. Analyze your time, analyze your financial resources, analyze the things you are going to need to be able to implement the development of your solution for the business or the client, as the case may be, and then document all processes from the start so that even when you have unforeseen circumstances or risk arise, as the case may be, you can be able to implement properly what we call change management in such a way that every process, every resource, every investment, uh, everything is accounted for, all right? The whole process, procedures, everything that goes into the establishment of your final product is properly accounted for, right? We have requirements, as we've discussed right now. Requirements are the needs or conditions that a solution must satisfy, right? So when it comes to requirements, as we would see in subsequent slides, we have stakeholder requirements. We also have business requirements, as well as other requirements that follow. They act as a bridge between stakeholders' needs and what the projects actually deliver. Right. So once again, we have what the clients, the business, the end user, which in this case are the stakeholders, right? What they need, right? The pain points that they need solutions to, right? And then we now have what the project or the product, final product, delivers to the customer. Now, there must be an alignment between your product and what the customer or the stakeholder needs. And so requirements or the requirements of the business or the consumer acts as a bridge between what the stakeholder needs and what the project or the product actually ends up delivering. Very often, you would find that for business solutions, if you get your establishment of the requirement processes very good, you'd find that you can even end up delivering beyond the expectation of your client, of your stakeholder, of the stakeholder, of your end user, your customer, or your customer base, as the case may be. Now, clear requirements help prevent scope creep, which is what we just spoke about a few minutes ago, which is scope overreach, whereby you're having to spend more time, you're having to spend more resources, including and especially financial resources to cover an enlarged scope, more than what you are prepared for as a business to take on for your consumer or your customer, right? So clear requirements help prevent scope, and those clear requirements, in this case, we're saying documented requirements, which must be in alignment with the customer's solutions. And that can only come via stakeholder interaction, interviews, and most importantly, observation. Because once again, it's one thing to hear what the customer or the consumer needs directly from them. It's another thing for you as a business analyst to observe the environment, observe the business, observe the in environment. When we talk about environment right now, we're talking about political environment, technological environment. If we can remember from the pestle analysis in risk, we're talking about political, economic, legal, social, technological, and environmental risk, right? So you want to observe these environments and how they affect the business, how they affect your customer and your client, and then be able to uh, document in alignment with the customer needs what your solutions are going to prefer to help those businesses or your clients achieve their goals or solve their challenges, as the case may be. Right. The type of requirements, again, like we spoke about earlier on, we have four types of requirements. The first is business requirements. What are business requirements? Um, Business requirements in this case are high level goals, including you have things like to improve customer retention. Kindly give me a second, please. You have things like to include customer retention. Let me minimize this. Okay, so you have things like to improve customer retention. Then you have stakeholder requirements, what individual stakeholders expect from the business, right? What do the individuals involved in that solution, the persons, the departments, the businesses that are experiencing those challenges, what do they need? Now, these needs or these requirements, as the case may be, capture who needs what. For example, you can have persons or stakeholders making specific demands of users, right? Uh, Saying they need what they need to make their business or their job easier, right? To create solutions for their position, their office, their business, their job, right? Or their market is a daily financial report from the stock market, right? They want it automated to their inbox every morning, right? Your job as a business analyst is to be able to understand, okay, so how feasible is it for me to be able to create this solution? What time do you need it, first and foremost? Okay, lack of automated financial reports is making you make poor business decisions for your clients that you consult for, right? And you do not know how to automate these financial daily reports to your inbox, right? So you need it as soon as possible. Now, it's my job, it's your job, it's our job as business analysts, right? To be able to say, okay, how fast can we automate this? what are the regulations around getting daily reports from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, right? Okay, is it allowed? Is it permitted? Do we need to get a licensing from the Nigerian Stock Exchange for that? And if we do need to get a licensing from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, how fast, how easy is it going to be? Are there going to be financial costs involved? Right? Are there going to be legal bottlenecks that we're going to have to solve? And if there are, what are the solutions to that? That should be properly documented. Now, what are the resources we're going to be needing to create these tools or these systems or these digital products or solutions, as the case may be, for these stakeholders? In this case, we're talking about a financial analyst who doesn't know how to create automated systems for automating financial reports to his inbox, right? That allows him to analyze financial markets for his clients, right? So you have to take all this into consideration. Now, these are stakeholder requirements, business requirements. You are talking about, as we earlier mentioned, high-level goals and objectives, what the organization wants to achieve, right? You have to, if you're discussing with an organization and they say that their requirement is they need a daily delivery of, let's take, for example, what's a pain point for businesses right now? Okay, let's take, for example, before I continue, please, if you have any contribution, please feel free to put it in the chat box. I would occasionally go through it in the course of this interaction, and feel free to interact with me as well. All right. Now, what's the pain point for businesses across the country as we speak right now? Let's say we have a business that is saying they need um, daily delivery of 50 liters of diesel, right? Let's say it's a huge manufacturing firm, and you're asking, okay, uh, why do you need this delivery? The question is, okay, we run uh, intense manufacturing activities, and we have a faulty transformer in our area, right? Okay, so the next question is, okay, uh is 50 liters going to be enough, right? What's your storage capacity like? Do you consume, how much liters of fuel do you consume in a day for your manufacturing activities or your production activities, right? Now, if your storage capacity is high, then remember, all these requirements, all these interactions, all these processes must be properly documented for the sake of clarity, for the sake of understanding your scope, for the sake rather of continuity, for the sake of consistency when it comes to implementing solutions for the clients, when it comes to implementing solutions for the businesses, as the case may be, right? You also want to understand, okay, so if your storage capacity is XYZ, if your storage capacity is only 3 liters a day or 10 liters a day, then are you sure that 50 liters a day is going to be sufficient for you? Or if you have an adequate amount of storage, are you sure that 50 liters a day is not more than enough, is not an overspend for your business? And if it is an overspend, then we can recommend to you and say, okay, the best thing for your business right now, since you have up to 10 liters capacity of storage, and you only consume, let's say, 20 liters of diesel a day for your manufacturing activities, then we recommend to you that you purchase 35 liters of diesel per day, right? Use the 20 liters that you use usually, store the remaining 10 liters per day, right? As okay, or store, let's say my math probably is wrong in this case, right? But we understand the scenario that I'm painting, right? It's your job to be able to recommend to the business solution requirements, right? Functional. What does these or what do these rather solutions do? You have functional and non-functional. What the system does, its features, its capacities, or its capabilities. Now we are going back to, in this case, digital systems, where you have to build products. For example, the customer says that he wants a digital system that allows clients to be able to book a room or a suite at their hotel in advance without necessarily coming to the hotel physically to book, right? So you want to understand um, what are the technical features and capabilities of this system going to be, right? What are the non-functional capabilities going to be as well? The non-functional capabilities in this case include what's the speed going to be like, right? So the customer is going to log into your digital system or application. You want the speed to be fast enough because you know that fully well if a customer comes onto your application and the application is sluggish or doesn't respond on time, the customer is bound to get frustrated, log out, and go to a competitor, making your client or business customer lose customer base as the case may be. So you want to take into account for solution requirements, the functional requirements as well as the non-functional requirements. You also want to take into account what are the transition requirements going to be, which includes the change management process, or rather, in this case, the capacities or capabilities needed to move from the as is part of the business to the uh, destination, or to the to is part of the business where you want that business to get to. How do we do this? We are looking at, for example, um data migration tools. We're also looking at parallel running systems. So let's assume that the business already has a database where they store information of their clients, their customers. Let's assume it's a bank, let's assume it's an insurance company, and what they need is a better solution, right? That enables them to store more users. You do not want to just take that customer base offline, right? So you're looking at transition requirements as, in this case, being okay, so you have something, you have a solution already, right? Even though it's not the best solution, even though you want to make it more efficient, right? But you have something already. How do we transition from what you have to what you want us to deliver to you? Right now, you do not want to take the business offline because you are creating a solution for them. So there has to be a transition plan that allows you to transition the business from its previous state to a future state that would be far more effective. And for that, you need to, as a business analyst, make your research. If it has to do with databases, you have to make your research. Okay, what do they need for transition? Okay, data migration tools, parallel running systems that do not allow them to go offline. If they need new generator sets, right, you have to look at, okay, so what are the backup plans that would allow the business to function as we are moving them from either an old transformer to a new transformer. Okay, they need a small generator to power the business. Okay, if it's a hospital, you're looking at, okay, if we're changing um, hospital beds for the transition requirements, let's not change all hospital beds at once, right? Let's change it in batches, right? Let's get let's say 20 batches today, change it. Let's recommend another 20 batches, change it, phase it in a transitionally neat way to ensure that there's continuity in the business and it doesn't fold up, right? Now, these are the types of requirements that exist with regards to types of requirements. Um, all right. The next slide speaks to how do we gather requirements, right? How do we understand what the business's pain points, the business's weaknesses, the business challenges are for the organization that we want to provide solution to, right? Um, the first is interviews, right? So you have to interview the stakeholders involved, you have to interact with them, you have to ask questions, right? Uh, from the top management down to the, permit me to use the word, uh, junior staff, okay? I think that's an appropriate, much more appropriate than what I had in mind. So from the top management to the junior staff. You have to be able to interview every person to understand how that challenge that the business is experiencing affects the stakeholders of the business, so that when you're preferring solutions, the solutions you are preferring is acceptable across board, right? You want to ensure that, for example, if you're saying, what's the best example right now? Okay, so if you're saying that um, the challenge for the business is what one thing that affects everybody in an organization is data, right? So if you're saying that the challenge for the business is slow internet connection, right? You want to ensure that you interact with everybody. Okay, so how does internet, what do you use the internet for in your role, in your capacity at the organization, right? So if you are getting a MiFi is not the word. If you're getting a what's the word of what's this you're getting a router, right? Yeah. So if you're getting a router, you want to understand, okay, how many people persons can be onboarded onto one router, right? Who are the persons that need this the most in the organization? What's your position in the organization? How much data do you use? How much time do you spend at the organization, right? They need business solutions. They need a customized internet service system, and a customized internet network system for their business activities, right? So you want to be able to ensure that you interact with all stakeholders involved in the business. Another way to elicit or gather requirements for the business is to carry out surveys. Uh, um, there are channels for right now in the digital age. You can do this online, but if you're interacting with a business, a simple way just be to print out a survey sheet, right, and hand over to stakeholders within the business. Ask them to fill out all necessary fields that affect them, right? Ask questions. Interact with them physically by also holding workshops, right, with all stakeholders within the business. Let them know, okay, so you you, you consulted our organization, right, for services. You approached our organization for our services, and uh, you're having XYZ challenge. All right. Now, um, are you aware of the risk? Again, we go back to PESO. We also want to, aside from PESO, there's also SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So you want to be able to interact with stakeholders in the business via workshops, enlighten them on okay, how their current state, understanding where they are as a business in their current state, understanding their challenges, and also enlightening them on the available solutions that exist, right, to solve those challenges. So let me quickly go through the chat box. I think I have. Okay, router survey. Yes, thank you very much, Ismail. Thank you very much, Joseph. Um, Dr. Lovedays says, where does legal or regulatory requirement fall into? All right. Okay. Mm, okay. So you're asking where does legal or regulatory requirements fall into? Uh, I would say within the four requirements, right? So what does the business need, right? I would say business requirements, right? And that's because legal and regulatory requirements directly affect the business as an entity, right? So now this is to Dr. Lovedays, and everybody in attendance, right? So the business has where it is at the moment, which is where they are facing a challenge, which is why they consulted you for your services, right? And they have where they want to get to or where they want to be, right? Now, for them to move from where they are to where they want to be, definitely there are for the solutions that arise. Definitely, there are regulatory requirements that govern those solutions. Otherwise, there will be lawlessness, right? So I would say business requirements and regulatory requirements, rather legal and regulatory requirements, fall directly under the business requirements with regards to the four requirements that exist for business analysis, right? Um, want to Okay, so another way to get the challenges or get the requirements for the business is by observation. Again, we've spoken about that earlier. You want to be able to observe the business. It's one thing to hear from your clients, from your customer, uh, what their pain points and challenges are. It's another thing as a business analyst using your experience in the field over the years, using your experience with regulatory authorities, using your experience with what the requirements are with regards to governance and risk, right? It's one thing to hear from the client, it's another thing to observe the business, observe its environment, and know how to implement solutions that do not go against the law. Because the customer is requesting your services because they are not necessarily skilled, or they are not necessarily as skilled as you are to implement solutions for their businesses. And some of the solutions that you're going to be implementing, if you're implementing any solution at all, would require your expertise or your knowledge with regards to the regulatory and legal requirements that govern the solutions you are implementing so that you do not get penalized and your client or business, as the case may be, or business customer, as the case may be, does not get punished for your mistake and services. Now, documenting the analysis, you have to once again ensure, for the sake of continuity and consistency, that all procedures and processes that the requirements need for business solutions and business analysis are properly documented so that there's alignment amongst all stakeholders, which includes yourself, which includes the clients, which also includes your partners who are equally joining you to prefer solutions for the client, customer, or business, as the case may be, right? And those documented analysis, you want to ensure that there is proper agreement between all stakeholders, again, involving or including rather yourself, your partners, and the client or consumer, as the case may be. Right now, that's for gathering the requirements. Techniques for requirement elicitation. The first is use cases. Now, you want to understand how users would interact with the system. For example, if it's a digital system, or for the example I previously gave in the past, or in fact, a few minutes ago, where we were talking about a customized internet network for a business organization, you want to understand how each office, how each stakeholder within the organization uses that system, right? This enables you to understand how you are implementing the design, the development of that system for the organization. Because if you implement it in such a way that um, what is going to the manager's office is supposed to be what is applicable to uh, the receptionist, then automatically your product would not fly at the organization. You've wasted time, you've wasted money, and for some reason, you are going to risk losing your reputation as a thorough business analyst for the organization, right? You also want to understand techniques for requirement elicitation, user stories, right? You can get simple statements of user needs. For example, I want so capacity, capability rather, so that it can benefit my office or my organization or my business, as the case may be. Right. So, for example, the case we gave when we spoke about the financial analyst that wants to create solutions by analyzing automated reports to his inbox, his mail inbox, right? You want to say, okay, for example, use user stories. I want daily reports so that I can track financial performance within the Nigerian Stock Exchange and be able to better deliver to my clients as a financial analyst, right? There's also prototyping, which building sample outputs or mockups, right? And showing stakeholders what it might look like when it comes to the final result. And you can, of course, do this within workshops, or you can do this within personal interaction with all stakeholders involved in the project, right? Now, scenarios are also another technique for requirement elicitation, where you have narrative descriptions of real world situations, showing how the solution will be used in context, right? Presenting to them how the solution, the product, the service you are rendering, it's going to be of help in solving that challenge. It allows them to even open up further to you and tell you, okay, if you are able to deliver so and so, maybe you can build it in a much more efficient way, because we also have further challenges in these areas. We didn't know of these other solutions, but now that you have shown it to us via this scenario that you've described or narrated to us, you can build more for us and give us more solutions, right? It helps you to be in alignment with all stakeholders. Once again, an alignment is very important so that your product can successfully fly from conceptualization to design, development, and delivery at the market. Now, document requirements. Requirements should be clear, concise, consistent, and traceable. Documenting requirements, rather. Again, it goes back to what we've earlier spoken of. It's not enough to get information from the client. It's not enough to get information rather from your customers. You must properly document them in a clear, concise, consistent, and traceable way. One very terrible risk of not documenting your requirements, like we've earlier mentioned before, is what we call scope creep, right? Or scope overreach, whereby if you do not document what you are doing, if you do not document what the client needs, then you end up not really being in alignment with the client. And then the client can come up halfway through your project and tell you, oh, we want you to add XYZ still within the amount of time that was agreed upon. Right now, that wastes your financial resources, that wastes your time, that puts you under a lot of pressure. It's the most disorganized way of doing business, right? Uh, there's no agreement, there's no proper agreement, uh, there's cheating within such scenario, and we want to avoid that. Common formats include a requirement document or product backlog, right? Requirement document, uh, you're talking about, for example, a table listing all features within the product or the solution that you want to build. One very good example of this is you can use a Google Sheet for a small product, right? Or an Excel sheet for a small product. But for big products and big processes, right, you want to make use of much more enterprise-driven tools for product management, such as the likes of Jira, right? uh, to document your products, processes, and the likes for the requirements of the business. Now, validating and verifying requirements, right? For validation, the question is, are we building the right thing? Right? You want to check if your requirements reflect the needs of the business, right? That you are not just building solution that is going to end up not being useful. And that's why interviews, interactions, observations are very important, right? You want to ensure that the product you're building is not going to be closed down by the regulators. You want to ensure that you have the proper licensing for your customer or your client, as the case may be, or the consumer that you are consulting for, that they have the proper licensing to make use of the product that you are building. Are we building the right thing? That's validation. Verification checks if the requirements are correct and complete, right? So we're looking at what's the quality of uh, what's what's your requirement really, and what's the quality of our solution for your requirements? Are we clear on what you really need, right? Have you properly articulated to us what your problem is, right? Um, we can have, for example, requirements documents could, if it's not properly clear, could give rise to conflicting issues midway down the project, where both parties say, "Oh, I thought this was what you needed. I was building this already." And I say, "No, it's not what I need." And then we have such issues whereby the project has to stall or come to an end or restart, as the case may be. And you spent money, you spent time, you spent all resources, and you burn your reputation in the midst of all that. Managing requirements. Requirements may change over time due to new insights, due to regulatory requirements, due to um, various things involved in the risk environment, right? Again, PESO, right? Political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental risk, right? Now, traceability helps link requirements to their source and track changes. How do you manage changes over time? We do so using a technique called change management when it comes to business analysis. You want to ensure that your processes are properly tracked rather, or traced to their source. And if there's any need for change, all stakeholders are brought to the table. All stakeholders are put into agreement, are put into consideration, and have a common agreement uh, as to the change involved. And there's a sign off. Very important when it comes to change management, right? There's a sign off, because at the end of the day, if a change is implemented, you want to know who gave the permission for that change, because we agreed earlier on that it should be XYZ. So why am I saying ABC? Who gave the permission for that change? And so in change management, there should always be a sign off by a senior stakeholder involved in the process, right? There should always be a sign off by a senior stakeholder involved in the process. Again, tools like Jira, Excel, Google Sheets help manage and prioritize requirements. Challenges in requirements work. Once again, as we've mentioned earlier, we have ambiguity and misunderstanding of needs, especially this arises when the process is not documented, right? Or where there is no clarity, right? Which is what we spoke about earlier on when it comes to verification. When the business analyst has not properly verified to ensure via a sign off that this is what all parties are requesting for, and this is what is expected of all parties involved, right? Conflicting stakeholder views, again, when there's no proper documentation, because documentation helps you to refer to a proper alignment that keeps everybody in track to say, okay, this is what we are building, and it is written, it is stated in writing, and it is signed off by all parties involved in the process. Incomplete or changing information, right? Which can lead to scope creep and scope overreach. The same thing, actually. Poor documentation or communication. As a business analyst, it's your job, it's our job, it's my job to ensure that the steps, the processes, and everything is properly documented. Now, requirements analysis, rather, we have a technique called Moscow, all right, which stands for must, should, could, and won't, right? Must, should, could, and won't, right? The must is the critical, non-negotiable solution that the business would fail in its absence, right? This includes your minimum viable products. Examples are the core functionalities. For example, if you're building a system or application, the legal compliance and regulatory requirements for the business, security basics for your solution. Now, the should It's important, but not blocking the delivery of your product. And this includes things like performance optimizations and polishing, right, of your product. Now, it could includes things like well, solutions that are desirable but of low priority. Now you have good to have improvements that add value to your product and solution for the business. Examples are advanced features, integrations, customization options. Right, the business doesn't necessarily need them, but if you could add them, they would add efficiency, or more effectiveness to the solution. Right, then the won't explicitly out of scope. And if you engage in that, then you are going into scope creep, right? Um, Best practices involve stakeholders early and often use visuals, which are more better and explain better solutions than writing. Review and update requirements regularly, right? You must ensure that there's proper alignment at every stage. You can do this quarterly, monthly, weekly, annually, as the case may be, and as the product solution, the nature of the product solution demands and requires. Prioritize requirements based on the value to the business. So a high value requirement should come more prior to, or a must have should come prior to the could have, right? When it comes to the Moscow technique of requirement analysis, right? Conclusion. Establishing clear requirements is essential to successful project outcomes. It aligns stakeholders, guides development, and supports quality assurance. Now, thorough and thoughtful requirement analysis saves time and cost in the long run. Uh, right. Again, we go through them. Once again, we have elicits, we have categorize business, where the business explains to you what exactly its challenges are, and in what order it needs a solution, what is paining it the most and where it needs solutions the most. Then you have to analyze using your Moscow technique. Again, the must have, should have, could have, and the part that is out of scope, which is the won't have. Right? And then you validate. You walk through with all stakeholders to ensure that what you are building as a solution really is what the business requires and needs to function. I think it's been a wonderful interactive session. Let me go through the chat box. Uh, Please, can you go back to explain the requirements analysis again? All right, let me go back. Let me Okay, requirement analysis. Okay, so we said the Moscow technique stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have. Now, let me explain all of that in detail once again. The must have is the critical, non negotiable part of the business, without which the business cannot function. An example is legal compliance, regulatory requirements. And so even if you end up building an application or a system for the business to have, the question is it legally permitted for use within that business? Does the business have the right license to use that solution? And so that is a must have. The business must have the minimum viable product. The core functionalities, for example, if you're building a financial application, it must have core functions that serve the customer needs, without which that application is useless. All right. Now, they should have. It's important. However, it serves as an add-on. to the core functionalities of that business. By the way, the must-have, you can also add security requirements to the must-have, right? Because if you're building any product or service, you have to put into consideration the security requirements for that service, right? What are the best practices in using that product, right? Or that solution? That's the security basic, right? Without those best practices, it could cause harm, it could cause damage, it could raise security concerns. Now, the should have, it's important, but again, it's not a must, right? Examples include performance optimization, right? So we have a product, but it can be optimized. It can be made more effective by adding small Jara here and there. That is a should have, right? An example is add-on features, polishing an application to make the landing page finer, right? If the landing page is not so beautified, as long as you are providing the core functionalities and the customer is assured via your reputation of security on the application, it's a good to go, right? However, if you add the beautification and all that, that's a should have. By then, you've already had your minimum viable product in place, and the customer's solution has already been preferred. Now, the could have is desirable, but of low priority. Good to have improvements. Again, they add value. Examples are advanced features. So, does the application um, say hello? Does the application do extra features? Now, if what the customer needs is a banking application that stores customer details, right? Um, an add-on would be that, okay, the application can uh, send reminders to clients and say, okay, we've not seen you banking with us for some days. Is there any problem? That's an add-on. That's a could have, right? Because that's not a core requirement of why the business consulted you. Now, a won't have in this case would be that the application, the bank is telling you should build a database that stores customer requirements, stores customer data, and then you are now also adding that the application should store customers' health data. Now, that's out of scope when it comes to a banking application. What does banking applications have to do with health data, right? So that's it when it comes to requirement analysis. Thank you very much, Judith. And thank you very much, everyone. I think it's been a good session thus far. Hi, Damala. Hi, Boma.
All right,
Hello.
thank you so much. Yes, I can hear you, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can.
All
Hi.
right, thank you. Thank you so much for for today's session. And everyone, please let's appreciate our last trainer for today. Thank you for that excellent delivery. All right, just a few announcements before we call it a day. Please ensure to do all your assessments. Like I earlier said, you are to meet the cutoff point of 60% of all assessments. That's PEP, BA, PM, and ISO. Please, you are to have 60% across all of these programs. All right? So ensure you do your assessment as at the scheduled time. Please also note that the link to this assessment is going to be deactivated, say in the third to the last week of the end of this program. So we are imploring every one of you to do your assessment. All right. Thank you for that. And if you are yet to pay up your registration fee, the information reaching me here is that the payment deadline has been extended. New date is going to be communicated to you in the course of the new week. So if you are still in this category who are yet to pay, there is a grace period, all right? Thank you so much. The training material as well as the recording of today's session is going to be sent to you all on the group. And then please follow us on all of our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there is any other announcement, you will definitely hear from us in the WhatsApp group. That will be all from me. And if you are yet to fill up the feedback form, please go ahead and do so. And also your attendance. That will be all from me at this point. If there is any other announcement, you will definitely hear from us. Thank you so much and enjoy your weekend. We'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you, Judith. And we do the assessment. No, once the assessment